We just took all the things away from me, and then I started to play with dust. I think we should probably tie my hands down.
That's a different show.
Well, hello there.
Hi.
I am Christa, and I'm a cyborg.
And I am 5, pseudo-robot, and could be replicant.
Oh, nice.
That's because we watched Blade Runner.
That's because we watched Blade Runner. And this is Cyborg versus Robot.
Yes, it is.
A Real Humans
You know,
podcast.
that's all going to get picked up when you're touching the table.
God.
I know.
So I had never actually seen Blade Runner before.
Well, first we're going to talk about what we're doing this week, which is we're going to be talking about episode 4, season 1, or season 1, episode 4 of Real Humans, and the episode's called Semi-Human Rights. It's directed by Harold Hammerl again. It's his last episode.
I know, I read
before
that.
he does the final 2, and it's a different director in between, and this aired February 5th, 2012. But yeah, we watched Blade Runner because you had not seen it.
I had not seen it, and apparently it's a big deal. I had heard about it, of course, because I have dated straight men, and so it's a thing you hear about.
I don't think that is exclusive to straight men. I think that's a sci-fi thing.
Okay, I've maybe dated a lot of sci-fi fans.
Right.
Actually, that's probably the case across the board. That's interesting. You know what? When I told my roommate that I had never seen it before, he was like, "How old are you?" Basically asking, like, what have I been doing with my life this entire time that I haven't seen Blade Runner?
Yeah, which is, I think, an absolutely fair question.
That's a fair question. All right.
Well,
and
you also haven't seen...
I don't have an answer for that question because I don't know what the fuck I've been doing.
Well, you also haven't seen Terminator, right?
No.
So that's going to come up later in our discussion. You not knowing about Terminator, and we'll get to that when we get to that. How did you like Blade Runner?
I enjoyed it.
Because it goes over a lot of the same issues that Real Humans does.
Well, it goes over a lot of the same issues that I'm seeing in all of these short films and shows that we're watching as far as the plight and rights of like artificial intelligence. But I thought it was really amazingly done. I mean, it certainly has a firm stamp of the early 80s on it. But otherwise,
you think?
Yeah,
I think it's a pretty timeless movie.
But it is. I think it is timeless. But I was impressed with how good it looks, considering it's...
Yeah, because the effects hold up.
The effects hold up, and the production design is amazing, and it's beautifully shot. There's so many great shots in it, and the design is so detailed and incredible. Like, all of that I loved about it.
Yeah, they do the same thing that Real Humans does, and it kind of gets around that idea of showing you what the insides, the guts of these replicants look like, for the most part. I can't remember if there's a scene where they showed the insides of the replicants.
Well, they bleed. Like, when they get killed, they bleed, but we don't otherwise see guts or technology or...
Yeah. I think one of the key differences is that the replicants were built for basically working in mines on slave planets. Mm-hmm. And then they built sex replicants or pleasure replicants. Pleasure models. So they have the pleasure models, which I guess they're used by whoever the human overseers are on these planets, and they're illegal on Earth. And the replicants come to Earth and I guess kill their leader, basically, or extend their lives. They want to, because they have a failsafe where they only live 4 years, and they want to figure out how to extend their life. And did you know that they have 2 versions of the movie where, this is going to spoil a bit of Blade Runner, but it was 1982, so too bad. The original theatrical version had it that Deckard wasn't a replicant. And in this version of the film, it very strongly implies that he was a replicant.
And apparently, wasn't there like a voiceover in a version as well? There was like a narrator
in the
original, and they cut that out.
That got cut out.
Yeah,
so
you should be able to tell a story without narration.
Mm-hmm.
I can appreciate that he didn't want things sort of hammered over the head.
Yeah. So we're not really going to talk about Blade Runner, but it's been well, other than to say that you should kind of watch it if you're watching Real Humans and you haven't seen it.
Because it does seem to inform a lot of the references and that kind of exploration of those ideas. From what I can... Like, just because anytime I talk about Real Humans or these other things, people in conversation to me make reference to Blade Runner. So it's like, having not seen it, I was clearly missing out on a key point in any conversation about films about
androids.
Yeah, thank you.
And they're going to bring up Terminator and other films.
Yes.
I think those would probably be the two biggies.
Yeah.
That would get mentioned.
Yeah. The other reason, though, that Blade Runner had come up with us talking about Real Humans was because the character who runs Hubot Heaven reminded you so much of Rachel. Yeah.
Who doesn't, in Blade Runner, does not know, at least at the beginning of the film, that she is also a replicant. She believes she's a human being.
Right.
Until it's revealed to her that she isn't.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
They did that in Star Trek. When Data's like mom shows up and she didn't know she was a...
We'll have to watch that together. Separately. I don't know. The big difference, though, that we haven't seen in Real Humans is we've seen basically slave workers for Real Humans, but we haven't seen military. But I can't imagine in this world that there aren't military versions.
That there won't be. Because we did start to see in this episode, I think for the first time, a much more ubiquitous presence of the Hubots. Like the guy driving the tow truck and the woman delivering the mail and the receptionist and in the rest. There's like I noticed anyways. There's a much more sort of constant presence of Hubots doing all kinds of things. Like it's becoming more widespread. So it would make sense. It would make sense that they would probably also be involved in the military.
But we've also seen when we were in the Hubot market last week, we saw that first Hubot that was going on the market for the general population, which had a backstory.
Right.
Which makes me think if there were a military application, there would be in the world Hubot spies. Well, I guess they're pretty easy to scan, though.
Yeah.
So you'd know that it was a Hubot.
But I wonder if it's something that would have been already highly developed by the military and that then became a technology available to the public.
I'm going to go with no, because of a story I heard when Barack Obama became president. There were some news stories about how he wanted to be able to text to his family. Just text, Did
he not have a cell phone?
He had a cell phone, but because of the security issues, they had to build him a very special version, or an encryption or something else so that he could... because any written correspondence that the president has with anyone else is supposed to fall under the Freedom of Information Act, I believe.
Really?
So it's supposed to eventually, you're supposed to be able to go, I don't know, 40 years from now.
And read all the things.
And read every text he sent to his family and to his wife and to his kids. That would be in the public domain. So they had to do this very complicated, which I guess didn't happen with any of the presidents prior to this, where
George
they
Bush
weren't
was
texting.
I don't need to talk to my family.
He wasn't texting. I don't need to text my family.
It's I'll just walk over there.
So they had to put all these extra security measures.
Oh.
But it wasn't that they developed a special phone for him. They took the phone that he had and upgraded it somehow.
So why does this make you believe that in the world of Real Humans that the military wouldn't have already developed Hubots for their use before there was Hubots for public use?
I think that the military has no need to make any robots they make or any
humanoid.
weapons.
I mean, I guess it's the drones and the stuff they already have. They don't need to create.
Yeah, they'd be armored.
I guess so.
And weigh more than 150 pounds or whatever they weigh. I know how much.
Yeah, I was like, you actually know how much the Hubots weigh?
I know how much one of our Hubots weighs.
Just one?
Just one.
Which one?
There's a sex bot later, and she weighs 124 pounds. So it's very lightweight material. Which makes sense because you can pick up... We've seen people pick up these Hubots.
That's true. Well, it seems to usually take like 2 people, and they kind of will drag them across the floor. But I guess 120 pounds, I mean, I only weigh 120 pounds. People pick me up all the time.
Yeah, there you go.
People throw me across the room. I can't weigh that much. That sounded terrible. I don't mean that as like... It's a sport that we play. Great. So in episode 4...
You want to get into the actual episode?
I do. Okay. I thought this was an incredible episode, and so much happens, and all these things start to tie together all of a sudden, and there's a number of important reveals, and it was all very exciting.
Yeah, this pretty much trumps every episode that came before.
Totally.
They stop feeling like we need to see every character have something happen to them.
Right.
For example, we do not see the vicar and her wife this episode at all.
Once they're asleep.
Oh, they're asleep. I missed that completely. But we don't really, nothing happens.
No. Because they're sleeping.
And Mimi, Anita, very little happens with her character, with the exception of things we've already seen hints of.
And slight little developments.
Indifferent.
According to you, not much happens. According to me, the fact that she like made a joke and laughs was just like, oh, she's growing as a Hubot. She's growing.
See, to me, that seemed that like she sort of just echoed that response. Although I did have a question when I was watching those little vignettes of Mimi and Anita and Sophia and Tobias.
Right.
I guess we could talk about that right now and get it over with.
I'm wondering what your question is.
The question was...
That's my question. Anita
was hacked. We know that she was a hacked Hubot, that we've seen that Leo can hack in, and assuming his father also was able to hack into these Hubots, and that's where Leo learned to do it.
Right.
And we know that they can get into the DNA level of these Hubots.
Because Leo mentioned that.
I don't understand that.
That's all right. We don't understand the technology. We're not scientists. God.
So, if you were to hack something... and then you reinstall the software.
Yeah. But
your hacks are taking place hardware level? If you're talking DNA, that's hardware level.
Right. Because she was sort of wiped clean and reinstalled, but she's showing these signs of that her old hack stuff is still in effect. Yeah.
So my question was, do you think that reinstalling her software did anything other than just... Does she still have those other files that were like...
Well, in this episode, Leo, when he's talking about making changes, he says to a Hubot, he says he can do it in a way that it'll go unnoticed, without encroachment, I think is the subtitle.
Oh, that's right.
Right, so he kind of explains when he's talking to someone else later on that he can make these, because the question is, oh, this is illegal, and he says, yes, but I can do it in a way that it would never be found. So whatever changes had been done to Mimi, we know that it's at a level or done in a way that anyone who would find her and reprogram her, that they still actually can't touch those.
Right, so she can pass an inspection, get sold to somebody, go into their home, and then she starts learning. Yeah. Which is what we're seeing.
Yep. So that's still happening. So you're right, not much happens.
Except I do like, there's the cute moment with Sophia where she gets cobbler. She gets dessert. That's all. And I think that just shows that kids can work with software. They can work with computers.
They know how to get what they want.
Yeah. So
that is a cute moment.
They get dessert on different days.
On different days that are different. I know. It's adorable.
But otherwise, nothing else happens with her in this episode.
That's true. But let's move on to the cold opening, so we pick up with Leonard and Odie driving like Thelma and Louise through the Swedish back roads.
Towards Skan.
Yeah. Did you look that up?
No, but I'm assuming it's a city in...
Well, they're going fishing, so I thought it must be like a lake.
I guess we could look that up. So while we're doing that, they pass a police car.
Yep, and they don't stop.
No.
And Leonard is drinking. I wondered what beer he was drinking. Can you tell him?
I didn't pay attention to that. I think it's because I'm not a beer drinker, so I saw the beer and I'm like, I don't care.
Whereas I was like, when I have my Real Humans theme party, I want to see if I can get that beer.
Oh, because, okay. All right, now we found it. Skan County is in the... Let's see, it's the southernmost county in Sweden.
You can fish there.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what it does.
Well, Odie has his fishing outfit on. You don't know what it does? What does this county do? God.
Yeah, sorry, I have no idea what they do there.
Okay, so...
You had me look this up for no good reason.
I think your research skills are perhaps lacking. I don't think that I had you look it up for no good reason.
That's probably true. If we knew what city they were going to...
In said county. So there they are. They're careening down the road. It is reckless driving. And they hear the siren. Leonard says, drive on, but... Odie starts to glitch and crashes the car. Yep. I was actually amazed that the crash seems like it should have been worse considering how fast they were going, because they suggest that they're going pretty fast on the small winding road, but they just kind of actually roll into the ditch.
Odie sort of fails, so
so maybe his foot let up.
Comes off. Yeah. I imagine they have protection systems built in, so they don't.
But Odie's not in good shape.
Yeah.
Odie's totally broken. So the car crashes and...
We hear the sirens in the background. Leonard hides his beer.
Yeah, he tells Odie to go hide. Odie says we can hide together, and he says, do as I say, and don't talk to any humans, and wait for me. The cops come, take Leonard out of the car, he gets arrested, and thrown in the back of the police car, and then we have the opening.
Do you want to keep talking about Leonard, or do you want to get back to the...
I mean, because then the Angmans show up there. I mean, it's all so overlappy.
Well, yeah, their storylines don't overlap very
Not
much,
a lot.
though. So, well, okay, we'll skip to...
Well, we could just talk about Leonard's arc in this episode.
Yeah, because Leonard's arc is also a smaller one.
It's a small arc, a soft arc, gentle curve.
So, the next time we see Leonard, then the police are bringing him home.
Yes.
This is, I know I texted you to say, did you catch the Hitchcock reference in the show?
Which I didn't on my first viewing.
Did you on the second viewing?
With Vera standing at the window?
Vera standing at the window is very similar to a scene out of Rear Window, which is the scene where Jimmy Stewart is looking through his camera lens at the window across the courtyard, and he's called police to investigate domestic violence. And they're freaking out. The police come to the apartment, and then the guy looks through the window and catches Jimmy Stewart. And this shot, where Vera is at the window, so it really reminded me of that, where it's like for a very split second, kind of breaks the fourth wall, and she's looking at you when you're watching her.
That's
and she
true.
And then she drops her eyes.
And opens the door.
With the two cops, exactly the same as in Rear Window, and... I think they've made an effort to show a lot of Hitchcock-like shooting when it comes to Vera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. You've mentioned it before.
I have. There's a lot of Psycho references and a lot of Rear Window so far that I've noticed. There's probably more because I'm not a huge Hitchcock buff.
You seem like a buff to me.
I've just seen some Hitchcock. That's all.
Later... He gets in the house and he pleads with Vera to not tell Inga, and Vera says, I'm obligated to, and he says, promise, please don't. And she says, okay, I won't. And then he goes to hug her.
Oh, I know.
And that's fun. It's
really quite...
Because he believes her and he thinks that she's going to help cover his ass, and he almost goes to hug her and then sort of remembers himself.
Yeah, she has this phrasing, and the subtitles that I saw were a little off, because Vera's delivery of that line... where it's, I won't call your daughter, Leonard. I promise. And the subtitles sort of switch around the sentence, so it sounds a little different.
Yes.
But I love that sort of delivery. He thanks her, and he raises his arms, just drops them to the side.
Yeah, he doesn't hug her and walks by.
Do you remember they've negotiated where she's like, I won't tell him if you go to bed, basically.
Right. But the minute he walks out of frame, she pulls her cell phone out and calls Inga.
Why do you think that Vera can't just text or call without needing to...
That she should have like a built-in...
Yeah.
She could just like
she's
email
not hooked
from
up,
her head.
She's not hooked up to a network.
No, I guess not.
Yeah, I just thought Skynet, which you won't know what that is because you don't watch Terminator, which is where the machines take over, and because they can take over the internet.
I don't watch Terminator. That sounds like something you would do regularly.
You would. You should see Terminator once a year. Or one of either Terminator or Terminator 2. Just watch it once a year. Make sure that Skynet doesn't come. Want to remind yourselves of the dangers of Skynet.
How? I have no idea what you're talking about.
That is when, in Terminator, the machines become self-aware, and because they're all networked...
I see.
They can take over...
Archebots are not networked.
No.
You're absolutely right. So she has to get out the phone and call.
Yeah. And I think that's a failsafe.
Yeah.
I think the not having them hook up to a network makes sure that they can't communicate amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Unless
Well, then
you
it's
give
going to
them...
get into the her territory where the AIs are all like talking to each other.
Well,
all
they've
the time.
we've seen like Rick and Bo have email addresses and they email each other
Yeah.
about...
But they use a device to email each
Yeah,
other.
she has to lend them... Teresa lends Rick her phone so that he can email at some point. Anyway, I found that an interesting detail that they've made sure that we know that the computers aren't networked.
Yeah.
And that it's an intentional thing.
I think so.
Yeah. I guess the next time we see Leonard, there's a little bit of overlap with Inger, but Inger's story doesn't overlap with Leonard's. Really.
No, well, they come to the house and she tells him he's being childish. He's locked himself in his room and she's trying to get in and she's saying, Papa, and she's asking to be let in. And the minute she goes, Leonard, then he opens the door. Yeah. I was like, once the daughter says his name, he's like, okay.
And he's painting his boat.
He's painting his boat and she says, are you sad?
Did you notice that Odie's boat that he smashed was there?
No, I didn't.
It's in that scene. He's painting his boat and Odie's boat has been sort of reassembled and it's been put together with clothespins.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's so he's rebuilding Odie's smashed boat.
I mean, he clearly is sad, but he's saying, no, I won't go driving again. And later we see Odie in the bush, and he's been told to wait, but the little girl sees him. And Odie, for the first time, I thought a kind of emotional response in Odie. Like, Odie seems scared. He starts running, and he's calling out Leonard's name, and he seems scared, which normally Odie is, like, pretty, like...
He's pretty even-keeled.
Pretty clueless, just sticking with the lasagna and the, like, let's hang out comments, and always kind of checked out, because he's broken, and he, alone in the woods, he seemed frightened. He falls down, we see that Leonard has taken a cab back to the spot, he's calling for Odie, he can't find him.
Yeah, I think that's our one...
That's the last time that's all we really see of them.
It's a weird sort of character shift for Odie.
Yeah. As far as seeing him have a response.
Yeah.
He falls down in the woods and he's this little girl who still has seen him, the family pick him up. They call this is told in a very sort of quick visual sequence that basically Odie is picked up by the black market guys.
The two guys in the van.
Because the little girl sees him and they sell him, and now we know that Odie's with the black market guys.
Who are, just so we know, they are Silas and Jim.
Oh, Silas and Jim.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, this show is terrible with giving us character names.
They don't really refer to each other by name.
They do in a later scene. We hear Jim's name, but we don't hear Silas's name.
Oh, you're right.
But I decided this was a little silly with us waiting for the characters to reveal the names.
You're just going to find out.
So I'm just going to find the names from the credits. And so it's Silas and Jim are our two guys in the band.
You are a proactive podcast host.
Now let's go back and do Teresa and Bo and Inger's the court case, where the semi-human rights part of our story comes from.
Right.
Let's. Which happens. This all stems from the human rights aspect of the story. Stems from.
Hold on a second.
Sure.
I just have to move. Just start what you were saying again.
Okay. The semi-human rights aspect of the story.
Because I wasn't actually really listening anyways.
Oh, you're the worst.
I'm the worst.
So, going back to near the top of the show, where we see where the semi-human rights aspect of the story comes from, and that is when Teresa, Rick, Pillar, and Bo go out to a club. Mm-hmm. So they are in line at the Ambassador, which is a real club in Stockholm.
Is it?
Yep.
Because you looked that up.
Yep, they do some house music. So if you go to the Ambassador Club
for real?
in Stockholm, you're going to get turned away if you're a Hebot. So they're in line, and the bouncer...
I want to go.
You want to go?
Yeah.
You could go.
I'm going to go.
They do have a lot of house music.
Well, I mean, that's not really my thing, though.
No.
Maybe there's do they have a brunch during the day?
No. Oh. My main reason for looking it up was because I wanted to see if this club actually catered to people in their 40s.
Does it?
And from the pictures that I see on the site, it looks like the crowd is pretty diverse there.
Okay.
So, yeah, you could be a person in your 40s. You could go and you're probably going to get in.
Perfect.
Good to know.
But not with your Hubot.
They're
refused entry.
Our guests don't want to see it. They're like, men with men are okay, men with women are okay, but not this.
Not this.
The bouncer scans Teresa.
He goes to, yeah.
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 And she freaks out. Mm-hmm. And the doorman says, well, if you date a Pac-Man, you might be one.
We hear in this episode a lot more use of Pac-Man. Everyone's using it. Whereas before, I had suggested that it was maybe a certain part of the population that was using the word Pac-Man. But really, it's a pretty widespread slang. Which makes me wonder how big Pac-Man was in Sweden.
I don't know.
But
I imagine
Pac-Man is a little 2D circle that eats things, and they're referring to the Hubots as Pac-Man.
I think there are two things that come into play with this.
All right.
Pac-Man is a pretty popular video game.
Really?
Yeah, it's probably the first big arcade game.
Oh.
I have to look it up, but we'll look it up sometime. But yeah, I remember going to arcades and playing Pac-Man. That was sort of the game that was there.
You know what games I played?
What games did you play?
Like cooperative board games called Save Our Planet. No arcade games were involved in my childhood.
But I also think Pac-Man sounds like similar derogatory terms that have existed. So I think that was an intentional choice. I don't know what else they would have chosen.
Yeah, but it does seem to be very much one of the go-to slangs.
Maybe Donkey Kong or something like that might have been used. I don't know.
You mean as like a comparable reference, or you mean in the show?
As a comparable reference.
Because they make other references like, oh, they're a toaster, or they're like a vacuum cleaner, or they're a garden gnome. Like people use all kinds of derogatory terms about the Hubots.
They
Sirens. But Pac-Man is the most commonly used one. That's what I'm saying. So they leave the club, and is it Bo or who says, I thought we were going to the disco?
I think that's Bo. I think you're right. He's very confused. So this incident is what I imagine is going to be a major thread in the Teresa's storyline. We see her in her law offices for the first time. And we meet Magnus and her boss Henning in this law office.
I think we'd seen her in the last episode at work. Because didn't she meet... Do you know, because I watched... This is being cut out. But because I watched it 2 days apart, half and half. In my mind, it's like 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Not the one I watched last night.
The episode that you watched.
It's the same one.
Yeah, same one.
No one needs to know that.
So Inger gets called away for lunch to meet Teresa to hear about this whole story. And Pilar says it's not because they're Hubots, it's because we're open with our love, and that's why they turned us away. Mm-hmm. She says to Bo, just ask Bo and he can't lie.
Right, when there's a really interesting exercise where they ask Bo to tell a lie and he just kind of chokes on it.
Yeah, and he kind of chokes on it and is not able to do it. Although in the very next scene, in the way the show is cut together, the next scene does cut to that Vera scene where Vera lies to Leonard and says she won't tell his daughter.
So Lyra can lie. Lyra?
Vera.
Yeah.
Vera also
Lyra, when she's a currency. So it's maybe not like Hubots across the board, or maybe Bo actually can, but she's asked him, sorry.
They're not allowed to lie to their owners, is the thing that they're not allowed to lie. Because in the scene where Pilar says to Teresa, just ask Bo, he can't lie, it's Pilar who asks Bo to say, tell him the doorman hit me.
Right.
And he can't do it to her. He can't lie to her. But it seems like the Hubots have ways around their programming.
I didn't think about that. I did think about how some Hubots can lie and some can't. Yeah. And that maybe Bo is just one that has been programmed to not, or... Yeah. But I didn't think about that there's maybe actually sort of loopholes. So Pilar and Teresa have called Inga because she's a lawyer, and they are pleading their case, saying we think this could be... that we could take legal action. Yeah. And Inga kind of questions them, saying like, well, whose rights are actually being threatened? And,
yeah. She says legally that Hubots are comparable to cars.
To motorcycles. which Rick takes note of and says, just because we didn't come from a womb, we're treated as motorcycles. That whole, actually the scene, if we were going to play an audio clip, I totally would want to play that scene.
You think that one?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if that works. Yeah, well, we'll try. Maybe. See how audio clips work.
Blah, blah, blah.
Just making more work.
It's just making more work. We're not fine. We won't do it. Okay, so, Inga says that they're not people. You want them to be treated as individuals. Pilar says yes.
Inga asks a weirdly spiritual question of Bo. When Bo says, we didn't ask to be made, she says, so where were you before you were made?
Right.
And Bo says, in you, in your fantasies.
And he has this little smile at the end.
Yeah, but I thought it was a weird question to ask because why would you phrase that like that?
Well, I guess she's asking the Hubots what they think their existence is. Where did they come from? And Rick has just made this womb reference. Like they know that they weren't born, and so she's asking them, then where did you come from?
How long do you think they last, Hubots?
Oh, good question.
Because, we've seen Odie, who starts failing.
And he's supposed to be recycled.
Right.
So he potentially, in theory, reached the end of his life as a piece of technology. But
right.
We don't know how long they had him. A couple of years? You know, like your average laptop.
Yeah, like 5 years maybe?
Really? 5?
Well, if we go with Blade Runner logic, 4 years.
But that's imposed in Blade Runner.
A hard drive...
as a means to control.
But a hard drive now in a computer, you can expect it to last about 5 to 7 years.
Okay. So we'll just assume that's the same life expectancy in this imaginary world.
Yeah. Well, they have hard drives, and they have... Which I got some specs. I got you some specs, some Hubot specs.
What are your Hubot specs?
Later.
Oh.
Well, when we get to Leo's part, we can talk about that. But let's keep talking about Inger's law case.
All right.
So after all of this, Inger goes to... Where did she go to next?
Inga goes back to the office. Oh, no. After this, Inga talks to Hans about it.
She does.
And is saying, like, this might be a case, this might be groundbreaking, and he's sort of like, all right, I think I'm a modern man, but I don't really see their relationship as something that's worth defending or
yeah.
And she's sort of saying, like, she's so bored at work and she really wants something to sink her teeth into. I mean, we see her in this episode that she does feel probably devalued at work and wants the opportunity to have something that she feels more invested in.
And Hans does ask if Inger thinks that Teresa is, raises his eyebrows.
And she says, I think so. And then she says Pilar does it with her bow. And he's like, her bow. And then while they're having this little conversation about, like, can you love a Hubot? And is this something new that the Hubots are going to have rights? In the background, Tobey is kind of eyeing up Anita and obviously having some feelings of some kind.
Well, he does ask her to stop calling her Tobey in this episode and asks her to call him Tobias.
When did that happen?
It's at the beginning of the episode.
It is?
Yeah.
I didn't see that at all. I must have looked away. This is the challenge with the show because you have to be reading subtitles. And if you look away, you miss things.
Yeah, well, he does do that.
But he also, in this... but then she calls him Leo at one point, accidentally.
Does she?
You didn't notice that?
No.
She says, call Matilda for dinner, which he does. And she says, I said call, not shout, Leo. And he goes, but my name is Tobey.
Or Tobias, he would have said at that point.
Okay, are we talking about the same scene?
Maybe. Maybe I misread that, and I missed the Leo reference.
Yeah, she calls him Leo, and he goes, it's Tobias. Or, like, he corrects her on his name.
See, I reread I missed the Leo reference, and I caught it as Tobias wanting to be seen by not his nickname, but as adult name.
Good thing I'm here.
It's true. So, yeah, I missed that completely.
No, it's because she calls him the wrong thing.
That makes sense.
Because she's, like, remembering it all.
And
slowly.
I'm glad we mentioned that because that is a big Anita moment.
Right. You're all, nothing happens with Anita.
That question that I asked about the, like, DNA level.
Yeah.
It's
happening. It's happening.
Okay. All right.
But it's charming that that's happening in the background while Hans and Inga are debating this idea of can humans and Hubots be in love or whatever. Yeah. And in the background, there's Tobey, who is I don't know that he's falling in love exactly, but he has some feelings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So continuing on with Inger's court case.
Yes.
The next time we see Inger, she's at work.
Yep.
And we see Henning and Magnus flipping through photos
on an iPhone.
So
even though last time we said there's no Apple products in this world, we now know they have iPhones.
So that's interesting.
We were wrong.
So good. It's good that the iPhone's still going well, although they do not seem to be related to the Hubot Corporation.
No.
So
no.
But they'd still be needed because, as we know, Hubots are not connected to the phone networks.
That's right. You'd still need your iPhone.
Yeah. And we see how they treat their receptionist, Pamela. Yeah.
Well, it's part of the conversation where Inga's basically trying to sell this case to her boss.
Yeah, this discrimination case.
She's a bit insecure about this discrimination case. She's a bit insecure about it because she's like, oh, maybe he'll think I'm crazy. And at first, it sort of seems like he's going to write her off and be like, no, this is nuts. And then he invites the receptionist in to prove that they don't have feelings. Yeah. She's like, how can you prove it? How can you prove you have feelings? Like, this is a philosophical debate, really. And he calls in Pamela. He tells her she's doing a good job. She says thank you. And then he slaps her across the face. Yep, very hard. Yeah. Which goes maybe unnoticed by her. At least that's what he is suggesting.
And he says to prove... This is all... This discussion that happens about... Henning basically asks Inger, or says to Inger, that if you recognize them as having rights, then you're not allowed to violate them anymore.
Which is like, oh, that's an interesting...
But we've seen that. Mangus is like feeling up Pamela in the hallway. We saw Roger in an earlier episode. Yeah. Assault Rick, but nothing comes of it because...
And even when Hans purchased Vera, the salesman Jonas slaps her across the face. Yeah. To be like, look, they're machines. You can slap them.
You can do whatever you want to them. Inger says cars don't have emotions. Henning says Hubots do. And then Inger asks to prove that people have emotions, or is it a developed behavioral pattern? Right. Which reminded me of, I think, Descartes. He talked about the difference between like animals and humans and how like you can do this animal testing and do all these horrible things on animals because they're just signals. They're just right. Henning he's a bit of a bastard because he says...
He takes the case from her. He's like, actually, this is exciting. We're going to do this. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. Yeah. You'll get us in touch with the...
And he also says Hubots shouldn't have any rights, but we're going to take the case because
it's sensational. And she accepts that, walks back to her office, starts to feel slighted, rightfully so, and marches back in there and says, wait a minute, I want this.
And she gets the case.
Yeah. She gets the case. Yay. Good thing she stood up for herself. I think that's the Engmans for this episode.
Yeah. Now, we can either talk about Leo's arc, or we can talk about the Roger, Malta, Beatrice arc.
And the Therese arc and Roger.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus.
There's that, too.
There's so much
going on in this episode.
Well, let's just kind of wrap up Teresa, because meanwhile, we've seen her with Inga and wanting this discrimination case to take place. Oh, but how do we...
Well, we have to go back
Roger has to... Okay, so maybe we should go to
Roger.
Maybe we should go to Roger... Yeah, and then we'll have to come back to Therese and her taking Rick in and all that. Oh, my.
So Roger starts... where we see Roger this episode is he and Malta walk into Hubot Mart. Right. And they're clearly concocting their Real Humans Liberation Front plan. And Roger's really concerned that no humans get hurt. And Malta says this very cryptic...
No real humans will.
So...
Which is like referencing the group, the Real Humans group. Kind of saying like an elitist, like, oh, well, anyone who's part of our cause, we'll keep them safe. Right?
But we also know from Malta, he doesn't even consider some of the people at the Real Humans group real humans. Yeah. Because he called the chairman a Hubot hugger.
Right. And then he convinces Roger to take a knife and stab a Hubot on the back. They're being like little punk kids. Yeah. They stab the Hubot the blue goo drips down her leg. It's nicely done.
Yeah.
And they run out of the store. Back to Malta's house. Look where Malta lives with his mom.
Oh, he does.
Who he's not very nice to. They like get in there and he's like, I brought a friend home.
His mom says, really?
I know.
That's great.
And he's like, she's like, I've been baking. He's like, we just need coffee. And then he shows his friend his toys.
Well, Malta earlier says to Roger that he gives him this, which sounds like a false fact, the thing about Hubot blood igniting at 171 degrees Celsius.
Is that what your subtitle said?
Well, the subtitle said differently, but in the show they say
they say Celsius. Because the subtitles say 340 degrees.
The Swedes invented Celsius.
Okay, so they definitely do.
I didn't double check that, but I am positive that the show.
Right,
did
actually,
not
I loved
mention
that part
Fahrenheit.
because he says, they ignite at that temperature, and Roger's like, that's actually pretty low. That would be like a fire hazard.
What's a fire hazard?
And Malta's like, I read it somewhere. Like, he's just been doing half-assed internet research.
Yeah.
He's like, no, it said that.
And then he goes, to explain living with his mom, he says this dumb thing about, in the old days, multi-generational households were common. But now there's all these Hubots running around.
Right.
And those two things don't go
Like,
together.
that's his reason for still living at home.
Yeah. It's because Hubots
He says that she can't take care of herself, and she did have a walker.
Well,
But
he
he's
used
also,
to be a
it's
postman.
definitely like a, she brings them coffee, and he's like slams the door in her face. Like Jamie did to Harriet in Small Wonder. It comes back to Small Wonder.
It does. So Malta shows him his rocket launcher and
and all of his guns.
It seems very what do they call the militiamen? I don't know. There's a name.
Yeah,
But
he's been
seem...
stockpiling weapons under his bed.
Yeah, which seems like an American thing to me. Like, it doesn't seem that people are preparing for the robot uprising or preparing for the government to be overthrown.
No, Malta's a little exceptional. He's a little off.
So Roger confesses his whole situation to Malta about what brought him to be in the Real Humans, and that he has a son. We find out that he met Teresa when Kevin was 6 months old.
And he says, we're no longer together, and
because she left me for a Hubot.
He says maybe. He says it might be a Hubot, and Malta says that he could get Teresa's address for Roger, because Roger says I can't see them, and that clearly happens very quickly
because Teresa, Rick, and Kevin have rented Pingu because Rick is intrigued by penguins
as of today. Yeah,
and what I found interesting was Kevin looked at this DVD of Pingu and was not disappointed. He just sort of looked at it as in like, okay.
Roger shows up, gets into a fight with Teresa, hits her, is very aggressive, threatens her.
Yeah, well, he asks her if she's fucking that doll.
Does he?
Yeah, he says, are you fucking that doll? And Teresa responds with, it beats doing it with you. And that's when he hits her.
Oh, right.
That's when he grabs her face, and then and then he punches her.
Yeah.
She screams out for Kevin to call the police.
Yeah.
Which Kevin doesn't do. He grabs the phone and he just sort of waits with it.
He's feeling torn.
Yeah,
because
he's feeling really torn.
This is his dad, and he's afraid, and he's not sure what to do.
Yeah.
Roger says, I'll be back, and storms out. Gets to his car and is like, fuck what I did. He knows he fucked up.
Yeah,
he knows. He's like...
Are you feeling any sympathy for Roger whatsoever at this point?
A tiny bit.
It's really hard to feel.
It's hard to feel for him when he's just hit his wife. I don't know. I don't usually like that in a person. But,
You don't?
no. As Teresa says later, she even says, she says she understands where Roger's coming from, and Pillar's like, that he hit you? And she's like, no, but that he's upset. He loves Kevin, and he's upset. So, I can feel that kind of empathy. I can say, this is where your anger is coming from, Roger. You did not act on it in an acceptable way.
Right.
There are other ways to talk about your anger. But
I feel like Roger was probably not violent in a pre-Hubot world. Like, his job basically is taken away from him.
No, I think this kind of aggressive behavior has been coming out as he's been feeling impacted by the Hubots.
Yeah.
Teresa has called her good friend Pillar over and is icing her wounded face and says she doesn't know what to do. And Pillar says, I know something you can do.
the thing we find out of what they're going to do, we'll talk about a little later, because she ends up going to Hubot Heaven.
Yeah.
Which means that we should talk about Hubot Heaven.
And Leo.
So Leo isn't looking actively for Mimi at this point.
He's putting in his agreed to time at Hubot Heaven where he's modifying Hubots for people.
We see him, we open up on, Max is in the background this whole scene.
Just standing there. And there's a guy who brings in his sex Hubot, who is played by an actress named Jane Timglass, which means hourglass. Aww.
So, who, I ended up looking her up because she's an unusually shaped Hubot than what we've seen. She's got implants.
Very large implants.
And
is that actress really?
Jane Timglass has a blog that she runs where she talks about dermabrasion, Botox, and she talks about her implants as well, because I guess after filming this, she found out that she was given these things called PIP implants, which have been illegal in a lot of places since 2010.
Oh.
And there's this big court case happening in Sweden because she now has to go through this procedure where she needs to get them removed.
Oh dear. Interesting.
Because they rupture.
Yeah. So those are real implants we're seeing.
Those are real implants we're seeing. Those are her.
those are her fake breasts for real. Yeah. That's a tricky situation. Yep. So Leo is modifying this Hubot, this woman, and when he looks at her breasts, her skin is ripping, and he says, "Oh, did you get her secondhand?" And the guy's like, "I guess maybe." And Leo says, "It's not my business." The guy reveals that he got her from two guys in a van, which of course Leo perks up to and is like, were they two skinny, scruffy guys? And realizes that it's probably the same men that took Mimi.
Yeah, and he offers to do the work for free.
Yeah, in exchange.
In exchange for the address, which the guy does not agree to.
Yeah.
And this guy also wants to make, I'm going to call her Jane because I don't want to call her Sex Hubot.
Great.
So, offers to make Jane made into an eager pleasure bot. And asks if there's a way that she'll show that if it hurts if he wants to be a little rough with her.
Right.
Which is just creepy.
It's gross. And Leo says, yes, I can make her the best porn star there is.
Yeah. I did look at the display screen where they talked about the specs. And other than finding out her height and weight, there are a bunch of little references. They talk about the inspection date. But the interesting thing that they mention is the languages, which they call Zarathustra, which is an old philosopher who believed that the human condition was a mental struggle between truth and lies, and emphasizes free will.
Huh.
So just weird little hidden things.
Lovely little hidden things. Those are delightful hidden things. Mm-hmm. Nicely done.
So I thought you might be interested. I just wanted to know how much the Hubots weighed. 56 kilograms or 124 pounds.
Right.
Because I thought...
on her was mostly implants. Although I don't know if implants add that much weight. So later when that guy comes back to pick her up from Leo, he has decided that he will give over the contact information in exchange for getting Jane for free. Getting the modified Jane for free. Cut to, suddenly...
Well, we're seeing two things, because we see Leo agrees to hack Jane.
Yeah.
And the next time we see Leo, that's when Teresa is bringing Rick to Hubot Heaven to ask for Rick to be hacked.
Right, because I guess the idea, or Pillar's suggestion, was that Rick could be modified to become more protective, or to be able to defend her in some way. Because the question she asks, that Therese asks, Teresa, whatever, asks Leo, she says... Rick won't kill anyone, and he goes, no, he won't kill anyone. So she's clearly wanting, but she wants something where she can feel safer. She wants to know that he could protect her.
And he gives her the safe word, which is pass.
Right. He says that there's a safe word, so if you ever want this, you want him to go into a passive mode. Yeah. And then she adds, and I hear that you can make him good in bed.
Which is when Leo's face seems to change. It's just this is where I don't know anymore, because I think he may have done a straight up exactly what she asked for because she's just a suburban housewife. She doesn't want anything creepy. She just wants him to be able to protect her. And then she goes that one step too far.
Leo made a big change for Rick. The change in Rick near the end, I mean, is kind of... It cracked me up.
It fixes him pretty much on the spot.
So they go in there, and they go into a back room. Rick's sitting on the edge of the bed, you know, in his sort of hapless, clueless way. Leo plugs the USB in, and Teresa says, like, it's okay, honey, lie down, relax. And he goes, okay. And Leo turns him off, does the programming. Teresa seems to feel like she's watching him, like, go under anesthetic or something. Yeah. And when Rick wakes up, he has his physicality is different. Yeah. He's got this, like, eyebrow thing happening, and he sits up and he looks at her and he's like, hey, Therese. His voice is different. Yeah. He's like, everything okay, honey? Yeah. And she's like, yeah. And
he looks at Leo.
He looks over at Leo.
Yeah.
Says, who's this clown? Which Leo, like, does this little eye roll, like, oh, for fuck's sake, great.
What I found really interesting, though, is why hasn't Leo freed Max? Because he can clearly do it, and I think I know the answer to that question, but I wonder what you think.
Well, I'm trying to remember, Max and Leo had a conversation early on about Max could be free, but Leo said he couldn't do it alone. That they work towards that, but he's not making Rick free. He's not giving Rick autonomy from his owner.
That's true. Okay, well, that's the autonomy from the owner.
Yeah, so what were you thinking?
Well, that was my thinking. My thinking was that...
I'm sure he could modify Max and make him a good lover, but that wouldn't necessarily give him free will.
Right. Okay, good. No, that's what I wanted to know.
And that's what I want to see. I want to see Uber lover Max. So Teresa has her new...
Yeah, Rick's all fixed up.
Well, Rick, I don't know if he's fixed up, but Rick has changed. Rick is now... He's suave. He's got this whole sort of confidence about him.
A little bit of a slouch.
Yeah, and his presence has totally changed. Roger shows up at their house again
with flowers.
He wants to apologize to Teresa. He knows he screwed up. I mean, more than that. Like, he's done something really awful. He shows up with flowers. Rick answers the door and punches him, knocks him down.
With his little practice
fighting. Oh, yeah. His little, like, I'm the fitness model. I probably learned how to box.
Yeah.
And clocks him. Roger is totally taken aback, like, scuttles back into the elevator, runs away. Rick picks up the flowers and is like, I think these are for you. And Therese comes to the door to see what's happening. So Rick's new.
Yeah.
Everything's changed.
So Roger was doing he was bringing the flowers to Teresa so that he would, when he should have been back at his house,
for his meeting with Bea and Malta, which he is 5 minutes late for, which Malta is upset about.
Malta's upset.
They sit down in the living room. They're having their little gathering.
They're eating nuts in the car, and Bea says she's allergic to nuts in the car.
Yeah.
I was watching this because we learned earlier in the episode with Anita, they asked her to sit down for breakfast with them, and they offer her something to eat, and she says she will accept 10 cc's of water, which is 2 teaspoons. And Malta's asking Bea if she has a boyfriend. Bea says she's dating.
Yeah.
Malta says, oh, me too. Me too. I'm dating too.
And kind of skirt around.
We know he's not dating.
We know he's not dating. Roger gets home. They go inside.
Yeah. Malta hands Roger a list of chemicals that are locked up in his plant.
Malta says, can you get these? And Roger says, yeah, I have access to these, but these are dangerous.
He says it in a weird roundabout. He's like, only a couple of people have access.
Only important, special people.
And then I noticed Malta again. We point out he's pouring the coffee.
He says, are you allergic to that too?
Yeah.
And she goes, no, I'll have some. And she eats a little bit of cookie.
She does, a little tiny bit of cookie.
A bite.
And then they talk about how they were going to have the Äkta människor frigolese front, which are the Real Humans Liberation Front. And they give their one rule. They'll exist and operate until they're in a Hubot-free society.
Right.
And then they outline their system.
Malta reads out this like little handwritten manifesto he's come up with.
He's got this list of stuff where they're going to have warnings, and then they're going to have punishments.
And then...
victory.
That's right.
Yeah. And they're going to have victory, which will be the end of the fucking Hubot huggers and Pac-Man idiots.
Yep.
And that's when Bee decides she's going to the bathroom and she brushes by Roger. And she just sort of traces her fingers across his chest.
Which he notices. It's this odd little moment of
She's flirting with him.
For that second.
She's manipulating Roger. And
manipulating might be a better word than flirting.
Well, we wouldn't necessarily...
We don't know why she does that.
I think she's flirting with him until she goes into the bathroom.
What the fuck?
She starts trying to throw up her food, where we're hearing basically like somebody trying to eject a CD from their computer and it's not coming out.
Or like when you carburetor's stuck. We're like...
Yeah.
Yeah, she gets down on her knees and this mechanical sound is happening where she pulls out this condom that she'd swallowed, condom full of food, and we find out that you were right and she is not human. It was a big fucking deal.
0.1 for me being right.
Although I also thought she was.
Yeah.
But for different reasons. Basically, we're both incredibly insightful,
yeah.
and knowledgeable of the English language.
So then we get our flashback. We get our flashback again where we reveal this other thing about Bee. She's Leo's mom. They start showing and they show us all of these scenes we've seen before where Leo gets pulled away from the lab, except this time we get to see that his mom who's pulling him away is actually Beatrice.
Yeah.
And then we get to see the woman in the water who's drowning, who is also Beatrice.
Yeah. And we also see that at the same time that David comes running out when Leo's been saved from the water, that he then is also calling out Bee's name, because the paramedics say, was he alone on the beach? And then he's like, oh my god, so he's calling out Bee, and so we find out that's his wife. Beatrice was his wife who drowned. Therefore, the Beatrice we know is some kind of Hubot that he created, right? That's a safe assumption, that he rebuilt his wife, and that's who we're seeing.
Yeah, yeah. Or she's always been a Hubot.
You're right. We don't know. It's very confusing, but it is suddenly whoa, Jesus. She's not human, and she's Leo's mom, and all of this stuff is getting very layered.
Getting very layered. So before we end it, we should probably just go back over a little bit of our Children of David, Escher, rogue Hubots, who we left last week with Gordon holding Bible. Right,
who in this episode he's reading. He's on the last page.
He's on Revelations.
He's just about done.
Yeah, so we see Gordon and Flash charging on a full battery.
Flash is overcharging and getting a little buzz from it. Marilyn is drawing with both hands.
Yeah. Now, she's not a great artist at this point. But she's drawn some stuff.
She's drawn. She likes to doodle.
Fred is trying to convince Niska that they should leave where they're at.
Right.
And not wait for Leo.
That it's not safe to wait in one place.
Yeah. Leo doesn't seem that concerned with getting back to meet up with Niska. He's got his own stuff. I wrote down this question, which was, where did they come from?
Where did who come from?
When we met the Niska and Fred and Leo and Max, they were just walking through the woods.
Oh, where were they before? They've been on the run maybe for a while. You're right. We don't know how long or where they've been or...
Yeah.
Yeah. He says they should be moving every 2 days, but we don't know for how long they were.
Yeah, and they seem to give an indication on this moving around that they don't have a plan. Because Niska asks, what's the point of leaving this place? And Fred says to survive.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like they're moving towards anything. It just seems like wherever they were, they had to leave. And they're on the run, although no one seems to be looking for them exactly.
Not anymore, or we haven't seen that. And she's saying we just have to wait and we're going to take action as soon as Leo's back. And he says again sort of something about how maybe we could integrate or they like us. She goes, oh, they love us as long as we're property.
Yeah.
But for any real change to happen, we actually need to escalate the differences between us. We need this to come to a head. And then we're going to take action as soon as Leo's here. Right.
Which I didn't see that they had any sort of plan whatsoever until
we find out she's in cahoots.
Until we find out she's in cahoots because...
With Beatrice.
Mm-hmm. In her
car. Which now it seems like Beatrice is... I mean, the reason she's involved in this offshoot anti-Hubot group is actually because she's tied with the rogues, and in some, like, her motive is actually on their behalf, I think. And so Niska meets her on the side of the road, gives her a hard drive.
It's a package of some
kind. It's a
kind.
package.
Bubble wrapped package.
And she says, keep this safe. Leo has the final sequence.
Yeah.
So there's, like, information, there's something in this package, and it needs to be safe. Once Leo's back, this is when all the pieces can fall into place, and she says, let me know.
And we know that whatever this thing is useless without Leo.
But holy shit, it's such a crazy turn.
And B just hands a piece of paper to Niska, which I don't know what's on it.
And is that her card? She's like, call me when you need me. I don't know what that was. I thought it was maybe like her... I mean, clearly they know how to reach each other. They're in contact. Yeah, I know it's that too, but... so that's an incredible reveal in this episode as far as Beatrice's role and who she is. Well, we're back to Leo, because Leo now Leo has the address. He got the address from the guy. Yep. Do we want to say what happened to the guy?
Talk about what happened to the guy. Is this
the last sequence?
This is our last sequence.
So this is the last... Okay. We're back with Leo. What happens first?
Well, Leo has a gun.
Right. So
and he sort of walks into...
Which he got from he got that from the shipping yard. He took a gun from that guy's locker. Not that it matters.
Silas and he sort of bangs on the door, and Jim and Silas look through their little camera, and they decide they're going to let him in.
Yep.
Because he looks harmless, I guess.
Yeah.
Leo walks in. We see a bunch of parts on the wall. They're like, it's not a clean room.
It's not a clean room. Yeah, these are the black market guys. And
did you notice earlier that they used the same actress who we saw go in The Grinder with the
amputated leg, that they have her...
It's the same woman again, was in the back of the van with Odie, and I believe she's on the table that they're working on.
I liked that little effect of the limb.
It's the same prop. The exact same prop. I went back and I looked at the episode again.
You checked it?
It's the exact same prop, exact same actress.
Because we saw her going into the conveyor, into the...
Yeah. They had that prop. They recycled her.
Before we finish up, because the episode ends with Leo's storyline. Before we sort of end up what happens at Jim and Silas's space.
Whatever their little black market
Whatever
lab.
the little black market shop is. There is a scene that shows Jane. Like, I think that's important. It's a short scene, but after the guy has taken Jane, his new porn star beefed up Hubot, at some point it cuts to her and a kind of shadow. Her face is shadowed, and she turns her face. She's got blood on the side of her face, and it cuts to him tied to the bed in chains, dead. I think he's bleeding from the head.
Been killed. He's been killed.
She might have killed him.
In the worst set that I have seen.
Terrible. It's like not fleshed out in the walls. It's like this. What shape is that room?
It looks like if you just took one step backwards, you would see the rest of the warehouse.
You'd see the rigs. You'd see the lighting. You'd see the C-stand.
I was kind of thinking that they would maybe do that, and they would step back, and we would see this camera, and they're in this weird warehouse porn set thing. No, they don't do that.
It's just a really poorly decorated room. It stood out to me too.
Okay. I wrote down small wonder set.
As in cheap.
As in just cheap.
Do you think Leo knew that she was gonna kill him?
I do. I think this is what Leo has been. He's been releasing this. He's been turning off the safety on all of these Hubots.
Because he didn't like that guy. He's like, you don't, what am I saying?
Oh yeah, he did not. When the guy said he wanted her...
To feel pain.
Or to act like she was feeling pain.
Leo kind of made a little switch where she could kill him probably, and she did.
Do you think that he actually made it so she can feel pain, and then that was her reaction?
I wonder. Like that she did that she came to the conclusion to kill him? He somehow modified her in the way that it's not a limitation. Because he says about Rick, when he modifies Rick, he can't kill anyone. He won't kill anyone. He says he won't kill someone. But I think he had made it possible for Jean to kill someone.
I'm bringing up the Asimov's laws because they seem to be the number 3 of Asimov's laws is that a robot must protect its own existence, Leo is subverting all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, when I was thinking back to Vera and that she was able to lie, but that Bo wasn't allowed to lie to Pilar, I feel like the owner of record, like whoever the owner of record is
some part of that.
Is some part of that chain, and maybe that's why Max...
Right. They can't harm, i.e. lie to their owner.
Right.
But they could lie to someone else in their own kind of protection.
Yeah. And maybe Max can't be free because his owner's still around. Like, his owner of record is still exists.
Interesting.
So that he can't be free. I have no idea what's happening with that. I feel like they have figured it out in the writer's room.
Yeah, and they're slowly explaining it to us.
Yeah, and we're getting these little pieces, but I cannot figure out why Vera can lie to Leonard.
And drug him.
Bo can't lie to Pilar, and Jane Hourglass was able to kill her owner.
These are sort of conflicting bits of information only because we don't have all the information.
Right.
So Jane kills the guy. Leo in the black market shop pulls out his gun. He shows the photo of Mimi. He's like, do you know her? They say no.
Silas says we haven't seen it, and then there's this big thing about Leo.
He says, you mean you haven't seen her?
Her.
The proper thing to say is her. And then he shoots Jim.
Yep, just right away, so that people know he's serious.
He's like, yep. And Silas is saying, okay. We did have her. We sold her to the guy at Hummer. That's all we know. We have no idea what happened to her.
And we've already seen the overlap of Beatrice and Niska and Hubmart. So everything is coming together at Hubmart.
Yeah. Beatrice and Niska at Hubmart. What?
Well, that big plan, the Real Human Liberation Front, has
that's just going to go down at the... Yeah. Malta is making that plan. He seems to want to blow up that place.
But he does ask B to clear the security.
Okay.
At one point. So everyone's aware of this plan.
It's all going to come down. The takedown is going to happen at Hubmart.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, so there's Leo with the gun on Silas. Silas is revealing this information. We see someone moving in the back.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, comes up behind Leo.
Their Chuck Norris bot.
Yeah, the Chuck Norris bot. Norris bot. The Nor bot. Grabs Leo from behind, and Silas says, finish him off. The Chuck bot, ostensibly strangles Leo, and Leo falls to the ground. And Silas says, you're going to die now.
Yep.
And then it flashes back to a time when Leo died. Almost.
Or almost died. And that's when we have the David Escher, Leo's father, corners the doctor. Doctor says he can't do anything. And
this is Leo little young Leo post-drowning, lying in the bed in the hospital.
10-year-old Leo. David Escher says he's all I have left. I will pay you anything to do anything you can to fix my kid.
He doesn't say, he says, he seems to be asking,
He'll pay any
release
price.
him? Can I have him? Because David can do something.
Doctor comes with him.
What?
The doctor goes with him.
Really?
Yeah.
I missed that.
They go with him
to... When they get in the car?
They all wheel them together, yeah.
I thought he was just helping them escape. I thought David was saying...
well, we don't see any of the actual operation.
No.
That happens. But to me, it indicated the...
But he says no one will know. The doctor says there are rules and regulations. He says, I'll pay anything. What would you do if this was your son? And then they're wheeling, sneaking Leo out of the hospital.
Yeah, but the doctor being with them indicated to me, at least...
I thought he was just helping them escape.
He wouldn't... I think he might just turn a blind eye if he was going to be willing, but I think he's helping.
All right.
And then I guess our final shot is Leo wakes up to Anita, who smiles at him waking up in the hospital bed.
I thought they were in the car at that point. They're not back in the hospital.
They're in the ambulance.
They seem to be back in the back of an ambulance.
Okay.
And it echoes a bit of dialogue that we heard earlier in the episode, where it's her voice saying, "It'll be all right, Leo. It'll be all right."
Okay, so that's where that came from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
So what did you think of this whole episode?
I thought it was amazing. So much change. So much happened. They definitely ramped it up. They've clearly, the first few episodes, they've been planting these seeds and establishing these characters, and now they're showing how all these characters are tied together.
Leo's getting closer to finding Mimi.
Yep.
Which brings him to the hub market. The black market guy. One guy is still alive. Silas is still alive with Odie.
Jim might survive.
I guess that's true.
I mean, he was
Jim may
shot,
survive.
but
Leo is who knows.
Right. I mean, we're assuming that Leo will survive because we know he's not human entirely, but the Chuckbot believes that he's killed him. I mean,
right.
his body sort of collapses on the ground, and maybe they're going to be led to believe that he was strangled. But we know, like, oh, he probably can't strangle Leo.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know which parts of him are human and which are not.
Not the strangling parts.
Not the strangling. Clearly, he's not down for the count.
No. And Teresa has a brand new Rick.
She has,
and I don't know if that's going to backfire on her. I think she liked having the kind of childlike, goofy Rick.
Well, that's her perfect human, and now she wanted him to be...
More assertive, and
then...
And more sexy dance times.
Yep.
Yeah.
Leonard is getting more lasagna.
At the family dinner.
Yeah, he's going to be going to the family dinner and getting more lasagna.
Vera.
Has an episode of this gone by where we do not hear about Leonard's lasagna?
That's also going to be at my theme party. The lasagna, the beer that he's drinking.
Swedish beer and lasagna.
Cookies, Pac-Man free coffee, and a very well laid out breakfast table.
Okay. And will you give...
You're invited to my party.
Thank you. Will you give guests condoms that they can put in their throats so they don't have to swallow
I'll give them
any
condoms.
of their food?
They can do what they want with them.
Okay. So I'll find out that beer, and if we can find it, and it's a real beer, I'll mention it on the website, cyborg-robot.com. And if you want to ask us questions or send us email, you can write to us at cyborg-robot@gmail.com.
Or Twitter.
At Twitter?
That's my preferred mode of communication.
It is.
Yes.
You're very good with the Twitter.
I'm very good with the Twitter, which is to say that I just do it a lot. At cyborg-robot. I'm at Christa Couture. You are at Now We Are 5.
And this is the end.
The end. Sirens. So many sirens.
So
in the city.
So when did we record last time where it was quiet? Was it a weekday?
It was a Friday night.
We may have to move to Friday night.
Our programming. We're moving to Friday night.
When people are safely in the bars and they're not injuring themselves until after 2 a.m.
Cyborg vs. Robot is recorded in downtown Toronto, and it's an urban setting.
Yeah.
And you're hearing the environment.